optimizing what we do for our rules and number of controls that we're running. In larger total quality management or basic quality management, we don't just look at rules and controls, we look broader in terms of method selection, method verification. We look at pre-analytical and post-analytical. We look at as much of the testing process as we can. So I'm going to show you a large table which is going to illustrate the difference between using 2 standard deviations as your tool for doing QC, as your approach, versus if you had 6 sigma QC, which, as we remember from our last lecture, if you have 6 sigma methods, you don't need all the Westgard rules, you don't need 2 SD limits, you go to 1 3S as your rejection rule. That is, 1 outlier outside of 3 SD limits when there are 2 controls being run. So if you were going to do that on a single basis, on a test-by-test basis, and if you did that for a month, you'd find there's a 9% false rejection rate. For the moment, we're going to make an assumption that a quarter of an hour or a very short period of time is going to be consumed by your repeating of the control. That's the beauty of the 3 SD limits, is very little of the tail of our distributions falls outside. Most of our regular variation will be considered in by 3 SD control limits. And I'm going to break down the differences. So, as I said, 9% false rejection if you're running 2 controls with 2 SD. If you're running 2 controls with 3 SD, it's down to 0.4%. And if we look at an instrument that's running 30 tests, and you're running it every day, if you look at a whole year, that's almost 11,000 runs, and almost 1,000 of them will be out of control if you keep your limits at 2 SD. So that means you might have out-of-control events every day, if not multiple, maybe multiple times per day. Whereas if you have 3 SD limits, you have about 44 out-of-control, 44 rejections, which means it's less than 1 a week. If you had a choice, what would you choose? I would like to be out of control multiple times a day, or I'd like to be out of control maybe once a week. And that cost is not small. So, if we assume that it's just a few minutes to take care of a repeat, under 2 SD, that's going to be 147 hours of time spent repeating controls. That's 18 shifts. That's 18 shifts of 8 hours. That's like more than 2 weeks of staff time, of one person's staff time is spent doing nothing but repeating the control. And that could be over $7,000 if we're in the US, versus if we had a lower cost, that might be a little over $2,200 in other parts of the world. But the cost is dramatically reduced if you have the 6 sigma QC. Now, instead of $7,400, it's $330. Instead of $2,200, it's less than $100. The cost of running up a new control where I think we'll end the discussion. This is the Westgard Total Quality Management Plan. It's you can tell that it's a diagram my father created because he enjoys flowcharts a lot more than I do. There's a lot of steps in this, but it's really in the center is the spine of it, the 9 steps you need to take. You first start by defining the goals. You select the measurement procedure, you validate it, then you implement it, you choose a total QC strategy, which will be influenced by your Sigma metric. You'll design your QC. This is where the Six Sigma QC comes in. You'll develop what we call a total QC plan. There's the IQCP in the US called Individual Quality Control Plan. We instead recommend a total QC plan. You implement it, and if you've done all of those 8 steps, you now meet the most important step in ISO, which is, can you verify the attainment of the intended quality of results? That's a direct quote from ISO 15189. You're only supposed to use processes that have verified the attainment of the intended quality of the results. And if you follow those 8 steps, you'll be able to hit that verification. The tools along the way will be the method decision chart, which you use in the validation, the Sigma Total QC strategy, the Sigma of the OpSpecs chart, and the selection and design of QC. And with that, I think we can bring an end to the lecture part and move on to any discussion that we want to have, any questions and answers. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thank you for the stunning explanation, Mr. Sten Westgard. We will continue this meeting with discussion. To all of the participants, if you have any question, please write in the chat room. So today we already have
a question already from Tanya.
From Dr. Tanya Wangunharjo. So good evening, Mr. Sten Westgard. Thank you for your lecture. I'd like to ask to count the sigma scale. So can we use the allowable total error percent from CLIA or from the database in your website? Or should we calculate based on our own data? Because I've read that some parameters have different T% value. Thank you.
That's a great question, and it's a growing worry among the different parties in performance specification. That way I'll be able to take a look at any other questions that might be there.
Sorry, we're run out of time, so we have to end the discussion session. We would like to extend our appreciation and thanks to Mr. Westgard for the outstanding explanation and the lively discussion. So we're able to attain a lot of meaningful knowledge for us to apply in our daily lives. For all the participants, we would like to remind all of you to fill out the presence list that has been prepared. And before we close our event this morning, please allow us to take a documentation. We would like to kindly request for all our attendees to open their WebEx camera. And on 3, admin will take a screenshot on our current screen. Thank you. So maybe we can use the signature of Westgard too.
Oh, the W.
Yeah, you did that the last time.
Well, it's a big thank you from the Westgards to all of you who joined us the last lecture and this lecture this morning. I hope we have given you some tools. I hope we've given you some things to think about. I hope we've really highlighted a new path for your quality, and one that's going to be easier for you, but also better for your patients. So thank you again. I hope you will have a good rest of your day.